Call to order the February 13th regular school board meeting of the West Valley School Board. Citizens may comment on items appearing on the agenda when invited to participate during that agenda item by the board chair. Citizens may comment on items related to school district business not appearing on this agenda during the public comment portion of the meeting. Citizens, after identifying themselves, will proceed to make comments as briefly as the subject permits. Basic rules of decorum are in effect at all times. The chairperson may interrupt or terminate an individual statement when appropriate, including when statements are out of order, too lengthy, breach personal privacy rights, are abusive, obscene, irrelevant, or otherwise improper. The public should realize that this is a trustee business meeting conducted in a public forum. Pledge of Allegiance, stand.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for
I can skip over for a sec, so.
No worries.
Just glad you're here. Okay. We need to have motion to approve the agenda, minutes of private meeting, and the district substitute list.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we approve the consent agenda. Approval of bills.
How often does the propane tank get filled back up?
I mean, it's as needed, but I would say maybe monthly, maybe a little longer. Winter time is obviously more.
So it's costing $7,000 a month for propane.
And I think that was a little more than usual. I want to say it was.
We had a leak as well.
Oh,
We don't know how long the leak persisted. So it was part of like a safety valve or something. It was noticed a Thursday afternoon. Bill called the propane company. They came out, fixed it. The next morning, about 6 o'clock in the morning, Phil called me at home and said the entire back playground reeked of propane. And fortunately, it was a late start, but we were communicating with the principals and they with the teachers about possibly having red flag procedures essentially, and just having everybody in the building. We didn't feel like it was going to be unsafe for the kids to be on campus. We just didn't want them out where the leak was. But because it was a late start, the propane company was able to get here and get the situation resolved before students got on campus. And I asked the question, so I want a refund for all the gas
Stuff
that
in the
leak.
air.
And Phil said, yeah, they won't do that.
Right.
So,
So this is probably an inflated number.
so it may be even more off because if we make the assumption that that leaked overnight, I mean, we're looking at 12 to 14 hours between the time it was initially identified and then re-identified.
Does this include, is this just propane or does it include things too?
I don't think there was a charge for the fix. I think that's, they come out and take care of that.
Do they come and check like often for propane leaks?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. I think if there is calls, like if we notice something, they come out. It happened such a bit ago, I can't remember. I want to think they have been out looking at it. Maybe they just didn't tighten something all the way up, but we haven't noticed any other since then.
If it's on a keep fill basis, they probably check it. I mean, obviously they check it when they come, which would be every month or 6 weeks, whatever it is. I imagine. That's hard, yeah. This is Petty John's water. What's the deal with that? Is that,
That's for the kitchen, the elementary kitchen. They don't have running water, and so we buy the jugs for them. So it comes out of the food service fund. And it's also salt for the water softener as well. So it's both water and.
oh, sure. It gets cold water, but it's, yeah.
Motion to approve the January bills.
I'll second it.
Is there any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The bill's been approved. Any correspondence? I have no, yeah, nobody wants to speak, so it looks like we can go forward. Okay, how about the West Valley Parent Teachers Organization report? Have we got one today? Okay, we'll go on to the West Valley Teachers Organization. I think it looks like they have something.
Now we have a
prepared
whole
for us.
crowd here. So I'm Mrs. Rowe, one of the fourth grade teachers, and I have Trevin here. Do you want to stand up, Trevin? One of my students, and he's going to tell you about what we do in writing, or just recently did in writing. Sorry, I'll let you-
So what we recently did in writing was we did an octopus, or we did an essay about octopus. So first we watched a National Geographic video about it, and then we did a CBS News segment, and we made it into a circle chart, and then we did 2 column notes. And then we did an essay on the 2 column notes, and then an art project on the octopus.
Do you want to read one of your paragraphs?
Octopuses or octopi are unusual because they have 9 brains, 3 hearts, blue blood. Octopuses have 820 suction cups on each of 8 arms. They have a beak, a mouth in their armpit, and they can fit through a 1-inch hole.
Good job. All right.
He's gone. Mom's looking back. Better than-
These are the month of January in Reading Wonders, we read about biographies of different people. So my class reads short biographies and do book reports on them. So they're going to share their book reports that they've read.
I did a book report about Temple Grandin. She was born on August 29th, 1947. She was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Three interesting facts about her childhood is her family calls her by her middle name Temple. Temple had autism, which made her different from everyone else. Temple would have terrible tantrums. She would yank off her shoes and throw them at the walls. Interesting facts about her adult life. She invented the hug machine and many other inventions. Then worked at a feedlot and they wouldn't let Temple work there too. Many managers all over the world asked Temple to help them with work. Why is Temple remembered today? She is remembered because she had many useful and cool inventions. Two questions I would ask her today were, what interests you in animals and what is it like having autism? My name is Massachusetts. First day I was 7 August 2020. She had autism and never was able to hug her parents. Instead of talking, she hugs her. Temple was called by her middle name. Facts about her adult life. She made a dip vat and then tried to clean up cows when the disease was going on. She invented the hug machine. People with autism, they were getting hugged at. She also made an invention that really to have it. Why is the person remembered today? This person is remembered today because of all of the inventions she made. Two questions that I ask you are, what is your favorite animal? And do you like how shaped giraffes? Curtis got pink. Her place of birth was outside of Maine. Her birthday was on April 27, 1927. Her death date was on January 30th, 2006. The interesting facts about Curtis got pink. Greta had to go to a live children's school. Greta started classroom school in 1932 when she was just 5. She had to walk 3 miles each day to get to her school because only white could ride buses. The interesting facts about Greta. Greta married Martin Luther King when she was a kid. She had 4 kids. Yolanda, Martin Luther King III, Dexter, and she leads a medical march after Martin was killed. Why is Coretta remembered today? She was remembered by helping her husband Martin Luther King Jr. and help with boycotts. Leads medical march. What are 2 questions that I would ask Curtis got pink? When did you get married and who was your friend?
Ready, Beth?
Right, I'm Mrs. Ramiello, and we're going to tell you about a multiplication division fact challenge that our entire fourth grade has been working on for the last probably 3 months. And so I'm going to leave it to these girls. I'll show you this is on our wall in our hallway, and then they can tell you about it.
I am excited. We're here to tell you about the fourth grade beach math fact challenge. Each fourth grader sets a fish. For the fish to move, you have to complete a multiplication quiz on that number. When you pass it, you move to the next number. Once you pass all the multiplication facts, move on to the division. You magically transform to the. Once you pass all of the division facts, you have finished the challenge.
And then you have an opportunity to come down to our wing, and this is on our wall here with the fish and the birds. And then they make it to the sun and they mastered all the facts. Thank you. All right, so I'm Mrs. Funderburg, and we're gonna talk a little bit about science. So one of the last units that we did was with Mystery Science, and it was a unit on sound. And so Turner and Rye are going to demonstrate what they learned about sound using their telephone. So take it away, boys. You want to spread out, maybe? Come over here.
Vibrations of sounds are started by the voice that you give. So the string vibrates the noise. High-pitched sounds are long length, and high-pitched sounds are, or low-pitched sounds are low length. So the low-pitched sounds have longer lines, and the high-pitched sounds are shorter.
So demonstrate what you do.
So in class we talked through the cup, and so the cup vibrated the string. So if you talk through it, the voice would vibrate all the way to the other cup, so you could listen to what the other person was talking about.
And Turner has a fun fact. The
So
telephone.
the first telephone was made in 1876, and was first made on February 14th.
We're the middle school ELA team. I'm Bonnie McDonald, and I teach 6th grade ELA and literature.
And I'm Gina Wilson. I teach 8th grade ELA and Lit.
And I'm Wendy Alvarez, I teach 7th grade ELA and Lit. So we had our second, I guess it's the second annual West Valley Spelling Bee this last, it's 2 weeks ago. And that was sponsored by PTO. They paid for the, we have to subscribe to a strict spelling bee program, and then we can hold our own spelling bee at the school and then go from there when one winner and one runner-up can go to the county spelling bee. So, oh, it's going to take a moment. So we have our first, second, and third place winners here. And our first place winner was not able to go. So Chloe went to competed in the county last week and got 11th place. That was the first time we competed in the county. We held our school one too late last year. So now we're in the group. Now we know how to do it next year.
Next year for sure.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm going to talk just for a minute about what we're doing in terms of ELA in particular, and then this kind of dovetails into Lit as well. So I'm just going to kind of read my notes here. So we're using something called the EB Academics Framework, and EB stands for evidence-based. So one thing that we're really enjoying with that framework is that it combines literary analysis, expository writing, narrative, persuasive, and argumentative. So all the writing genres that we are responsible for are taken care of with this within this framework. the focus, no matter the type, well, I guess with the exception of narratives, but the focus is on making claims, providing premises, which is just a fancy literary term for, or academic term for reasons, presenting evidence and justifying how the evidence supports both the claim and the premise that you're providing in any given paragraph. One thing that we're all really finding about this framework is that it's really easy to tailor it to student needs. So, you know, if we're working on, right now we're working on persuasive writing. And so if I see that they're really struggling with one aspect, like justification, we can hold off and really dig deeper into that and get them competent in that particular area. Another thing that we really are enjoying is that it provides continuity between the 3 grade levels with academic language and content and expectations. So the kids come into ELA and Lit and they know what an RTL is, a response to literature. They know what a premise is. So they're hearing that academic language over and over from 6th through 8th grade. Right now in 8th grade, we're practicing the framework standards-based skills by composing just a traditional persuasive essay. And we're also having the kids, or I'm also having the kids include rhetorical appeals such as ethos, pathos, and logos. And then later on this week, the students are going to choose a topic of their own to write again a traditional persuasive essay as an assessment. So Mrs. Alvarez is going to talk next about how 7th grade is utilizing this framework.
So far this year, we've worked on response to literature. In the beginning of the year, we did narrative, and right now we're working on expository cause and effect. In literature, students, we just finished reading and participated in a mock trial, Lamb to the Slaughter by Roald Dahl. In the mock trial, students worked in groups to help convict or defend Mary Maloney of a crime that she committed against her husband. Students make claims, provide premises, give evidence, and justify how the evidence supports their claim or thesis. Using language of persuasion, students incorporate ethos, pathos, and logos to support claims and try to convince a jury of their peers. Students learn about courtroom procedures and juror responsibilities. Through activities like mock trials, students are able to apply ELA learning standards in real-world settings.
Then in 6th grade, they're starting out with a lot of this stuff. So we just finished a project called the Convince Me. And it's a really short project. The purpose is to practice making the claim and coming up with the premises, which are the reasons and supporting those premises with evidence. So they try to convince me of something. And they design a Google slide presentation. They use a checklist, and then they present it to me and the whole class. And this is one of my favorite projects of the whole year because it's so fun to see what they come up with and try to convince me of. They cite their sources, MLA format, and these are there's 2 speaking and listening standards we're covering there, and then that writing arguments standard as well. I brought an example. This is Jonah S. convincing me to get a hot tub. So his premise number 1, so getting a hot tub will relieve stress. And so we talked about how to cite evidence according to Helpline.com. One of the most obvious benefits of a hot tub is the potential to help ease the tensions of the day. The soothing effect of the warm water and massaging action may help relieve physical, emotional, and mental stress. So way to appeal to your audience there. A hot tub will improve how you sleep. So again, according to the same source, a 2012 study looked at the effects of hydrotherapy and physical function and sleep quality. It was a small study involving females between the ages of 30 and 65. The researchers concluded that hydrotherapy helped improve sleep quality. It'll warm you on cold winter days. So he used his personal experience here as evidence. After sledding and shoveling snow, I get very cold. Feel nice to jump in my hot tub and warm up. Counterclaim, we worked on that. What might a counterclaim be? So he came up with it. I might think getting a hot tub is a bad idea because getting a hot tub might cost too much. His rebuttal to that was, however, she's wrong because the benefits of a hot tub are definitely worth it, and there are discount sales on hot tubs going on all the time. So overall, I think getting a hot tub would be a wise choice, Ms. McDonald. And then we talk about the MLA format and how to cite their sources. Some other things we just finished these today. So getting an axolotl, which I didn't even know what that was. That was another one I was convinced of. Trying dragon fruit,
read the Nancy Drew series, lots of books that I have now been recommended to me that are now in my Amazon cart. I'm going to be ordering those. To root for the Seahawks. I had a few other teams that they're trying to convince me about. Read The Hobbit aloud to the class. Buy a pair of Nike Air Force shoes, which might just end up doing that too. Give the class more IDR time, which is our independent reading time. Raise chickens. That was very convincing. Lots of getting dogs. Visit places like Prague was one today. It's interesting. Get a cockatiel. So up next, oh, and a couple of these, do they look familiar to any of you? Because your own children convinced to be a couple of these things today. So up next, we're going to be applying this to reading some texts and on friendship and technology, the effects of social media, and then they'll write an argumentative essay about whether technology is hurting their helping friendships. So that's the next step. And I think that's it.
As soon as you leave here, go get your hot tubs.
I'm gonna sign out. You guys can, we're done.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Go on to the West Valley Teachers Organization report.
That was it. I think we're up.
That was it. Okay, that was the, you're right. Okay, the principal's report.
So I just printed out our benchmark data from the fall and the winter. This is math only. This is without any narrative or anything. It's just kind of our just the data itself. Not too much to highlight here for first grade. I organized it by grade level. So the first part is first grade, and it has fall and winter there in the pyramids. Second grade is the next page, and it has fall and winter there in the pyramids. And then grades 3 and 4 have 2 pages to them, just because of the way that it prints it out in Ames Web versus Star. So yeah, one thing to highlight on first grade though, that I do want to say is that we started very high in that with a lot of green, and we kept it pretty high in the green. It's important to know that it's pretty hard to show a ton of growth when you already have tons of kids in that upper echelon of percentile ranks. You know, like going from like the 94th percentile to the 95th percentile is you know, pretty tough and hard to do. Second grade, again, you know, showing growth through the tiers. Then one teacher in particular I'd like to point out too in this with third grade that had a lot of growth was our new teacher to us, Gretchen Wick. Her class grew by quite a bit, and I could tell you exactly how much, but it's in my office, so I cannot. But her kids did really, really well, so it's really exciting to see. And then fourth grade too is showing some really, really cool growth. They had about 55%, about half their kids were benchmark coming in, and now a little over 2/3 are benchmark. So that's really exciting growth there. I figured that I would show the math just because we got a brand new math curriculum this year. We're gonna watch that pretty carefully just to kind of see, you know, what the numbers show us with that. Next month in March, we'll bring a few teachers to kind of give their experiences with it. To kind of let everyone know that we spend a heck of a lot of money on this, so we better, you know, watch what the product is.
Yeah, it looks like third went backwards, right?
Third did
Am I reading that
stag,
right?
yeah,
Yeah,
kind of
slightly.
stagnated there. And again, I feel like I say this every single time someone's gonna throw a rock at me, but third grade is that really tricky grade academically, behaviorally. Again, more than half of our entire SPED elementary caseload is third grade. It's a really tough grade. I think it's
one seemed to shrink a little bit.
What's that?
The level one.
Yeah,
kids that are
yeah,
showing
and I
most
think, you
showing
know,
a little
looking
bit,
at
that's
this,
good.
yeah, Tanya and I looked at this pretty heavily, and she, you know, has a great point in there that there's a lot of individual growth with kids in there too, which is exciting. So you can see some of the kids that really needed that help and intervention are growing a lot. You can't see that on this type of a, you know, a graph, just because it's not individualized per kid, but some of our kids who were, you know, really low in the red made some huge gains. And I'll provide more data too for reading, as we go throughout the year. We do benchmarks 3 times a year for the whole school. And then as we need to, for those tier 3 kids especially, we benchmark a lot more often, 6 to 8 weeks usually, just to kind of identify the growth that they're making. Or not, and then we have to address that. Yeah. The kindergarten is not on here just because they did not do their winter benchmark. They did a fall benchmark just to see where the kids were, and then they're doing it by class as needed because staffing is really hard to do that many kids individualized. We'll get some data though, definitely by the spring for that. And kindergarten data is really good too. Again, I mentioned before, they came in math very, very high, which is very rare too, that they came in higher than that. Any specific questions about this?
Okay, so you said they were gonna dive into it more, maybe next at the next one or something?
Mhm.
The math
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, we've got it all printed out too by classroom, and then we're gonna, take a look at some trends in that. We took a purposeful break from looking at tons of data during the last 3 years, really during COVID, especially the year after. And we're kind of starting to now gear up in that again to identify where things need attention, maybe where things are going really well, and figure out why.
Richard, isn't there a training for the math coming up too?
There is, yeah. Yep. Terry can probably speak to more details on that, but yeah, our time. So
So we'll get a little bit more training.
Just with the new program, it'd be nice to
Yeah.
know kind of where we are with that.
you hear really positive things from teachers. And hear where it's lacking. There is no perfect curriculum, of course, but it's in my opinion, it's got a little better online component than Go Math. But there's still some challenges too with the wordiness of some of it, especially in that middle grade where kids are still kind of learning to read. Challenging, which was my big pet peeve with Go Math too. When I taught 3rd grade, you'd have a kid that barely read, and the math story was a paragraph long. So it's real. That's a real challenge too. Yeah. Questions or- All right.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
So, we are in benchmarking too in the middle school. I didn't print out those types of graphs and we'll save them for the next round. We'll talk a little bit more about the math. In our PLCs, the teams have been working on targeted certain standards that were lower or maybe are more tough to get to. And they took part in teaching aspects of those across the curriculum. So in middle school, you try to do integrated curriculum. And so one example is for geometry for 6th grade. They used those terms in other places, like in gym class, art, but then the 6th grade team also did a 2-day geometry workshop those 2 days before Thanksgiving. And they were concentrated on that. In 7th grade, and they realized they were low in the area of fractions and they did an intervention, stepped away for just a moment before they started the next units in math, worked hard on those fractions and then went back into that next piece. 5th grade was working on their multiplication facts to try to bolster them before they hit the fractions. So I think we've seen some differences in the math, and I don't know whether it's the new math program, whether it's them doing targeted intervention, targeted integration. There'll be a lot of factors in that, but we did see on the benchmark growth at all grade levels, but their percentage rates tend to hold the percentage rank of the class overall against other classes. So in ELA, they might gain or lose a point, which is insignificant if you gained 1 or lost a percentage rank. But we, as he was saying, like the 3rd grade dropped, it's really common in the winter benchmark to see drops all the way across. And we didn't see that. We didn't see the drops. So that was good. We didn't see significant drops. So that was kind of an interesting difference in this round. In the math though, which was typically what we would see in English language arts, we saw something in math that was really interesting, that the the classes held their ranking. They did really, there was growth all the way across. But 6th grade went from the 55th percentile to the 59th percentile, and 7th grade went from the 53rd percentile to the 59th percentile. So almost getting up into another tier. 6th percentile rank is like a half a year growth change if you were looking at the standards of that. So it could be a fact, many things causing that. And with the change for several of 7th graders with the switchovers with the teachers, I think that, you know, Mrs. Derenfield stepped in there and helped who was there and then helped with that intervention. And then of course you have Mrs. Tegler also teaching 7th graders too. So it was good all the way around. Good benchmarking without big drops and then some surprising gains. So we will take that, but we'll go into more of that the next time. We're gonna have a little bit shorter meeting to talk about those things. And the middle schoolers are just busy as middle schoolers are. And when I talk to them outside of here, I hear about confirmation classes and I hear wrestling and some of them are on swim teams. There's a lot going on. In school, our room reps sold flowers recently, trying to earn money, and they'll deliver those tomorrow for Valentine's Day. They're earning money for the social, so they have a little bit of a fund for that. And the robotics teams went to state, 3 of them went, and Mr. Honkoop and Mr. Keller will talk about that in the next meeting. And then of course the spelling bee was really fun. They let me pronounce the words. So
We
few
made
times I was
her.
like, am I right on this? It was fun though. I liked it. You're a little nervous, but it was fun. I wanted to let you know that the date for the promotion ceremony wasn't on the master calendar yet, but it will be on June 8th in the evening. So I love board participation in that. And that will be on June 8th, most likely about 6 o'clock. So you're able to mark that on your calendars. Any questions about middle school? Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Superintendent.
I have a few things, and there are several things on the action items list that I will, that we'll have some discussion around just for further explanation. But things that aren't listed there, to give you an update on our school improvement committee. It has had its first meeting. Went, I think, very well. Of about 20 people who have volunteered to be on the committee, we had probably about half of attendance, which it's hard to get 20 people together at the same time in the same room. But we do have a pretty representative group as far as we have administration, we have teachers, we have paras, and then we have parents as well. And also some of our instructional coaches, and all of our instructional coaches are on that team. So pretty, I feel like a diverse, robust group. Marilyn attended that meeting, and as Stephanie has mentioned one.
I couldn't make the last one, but I was
But-
gonna try to make it.
Sure, and I'll keep, the dates out there to you. If you can come, that's great. If you can't, that's okay too. So where we are with that process is we discussed at that meeting what Title I is and what the transition, what things will look like versus how we are now versus what we are requesting a waiver for. So currently we are what's considered a targeted school, which means we only get a percentage of funding based on our percentage of students who are identified as high poverty, and that's based on their lunch forms. We can submit to the state a waiver for the 40% threshold. So to qualify for Title I, just naturally or on your own, you have to have 40% of your student population as considered high poverty, which is that free or reduced status. We do not have that. So the process is pretty detailed. We are in the process right now, specifically of collecting data. There are multiple surveys out. There is a parent survey that is out. We've got, last I checked, over 150 responses on it. There is a staff survey that all staff are welcome to participate in. It's not just for certified. And then next week, the students 3rd through 8th grade will take surveys. So there's an elementary version and a middle school version. I sent out, or had Kat send out notices to the parents, and Also let parents know that if they wanted to preview those student surveys ahead of time, they could. I've had one parent ask for that, so that's been shared with that parent. So that's one piece of data that we'll collect. Our teachers are also collecting data on our student achievement, our demographics, things that have been done, things that are successful, things that could be more successful. It's really just, it's called a comprehensive needs assessment. The expectation is for it to be very comprehensive. So our next meeting, we will start reviewing that data to identify what are the strengths and what are the weaknesses of West Valley. From there are 5 components of a school improvement plan that OPI requires, and we will have meetings to address each of those components, with the final plan being done the first week of June. The state makes its decision to roll schools over July 1st, so with the fiscal year. So we will have all of that done, a pretty bow on it, turned over to the state, and wait for their decision. I've run our process by Jack O'Connor, who is the state federal programs director, just to make sure we're doing things like we're supposed to. He says it all looks great, and I have it in email form. So I'm gonna hold it to that. But I didn't want us to get to the end and then he'll say, oh, but you forgot to dot this I. So so I feel like we're in good business there. I don't know what that funding will actually look like though. I'm going to look at some other districts around the state and see what type of Title I funding other school-wide programs are getting, and see if we can kind of come up with an estimate. So myself and Tina, and I saw your name on the Zoom today.
Yes, I was in and out, but I should probably get the recording.
And then Gretchen Wick and Mark Fessler were logged in today to MTSBA's bargaining training. It was a lot to take in sitting for that many hours. It would have been nice had they done the 3 2-hour sessions. It's been a little easier to digest that way, but we've done that. Our next meeting with for negotiations is Wednesday the 15th. That schedule has been, we said it at the last meeting. It is an open meeting, so technically anyone can attend. Teachers can attend, families, community, parents, because of open meeting laws. Then we have one emergency certified teacher. He is in the great process of waiting for the state to finish their part, to finish getting his license updated. So that is moving along. We've done everything we can. He's done all of his part. We're just waiting for the state to finish their part. We are going to advertise for a long-term 5th grade sub. Our teacher who is out on maternity leave is not returning this school year. She does intend to return next school year, but because of childcare difficulties, she's taking the remainder of the year. She's using that leave. And then the last thing on my informational list here, back earlier in the year, Terry and I had a conversation about the athletic buses, because there had been brought up that it was volleyball. Some volleyball players got left behind and didn't make it to a game. And they were left behind at school, so we knew where they were. That part was fine. They just didn't get to play volleyball. But Terry and I have revisited the topic of having adults on the bus for supervision purposes. Currently, our athletic buses, when there are away games, the coaches drive themselves, because the buses go, they drop the kids off, and then the buses come back. They don't stay. So there's no return transportation for the coaches. I've asked Terry to find a way, even if it is parent volunteers, which she has done, to have extra adults on our away game buses. And it's something that we'll work on fleshing out a little bit better for next year. And I've even told her that, but if a parent volunteers to supervise one of our athletic buses, we'll cover, as a district, we'll cover their background check and do what we can to help them in that way. But considering some of our bus rides are a little bit long and students are a little bit silly and drivers need to focus on driving. So we're making a more concentrated effort to have increased supervision on our athletic buses. We would love to have more supervision on all of our buses, but unfortunately that just, we can't do that. But we're making the effort there.
These be volunteers.
Volunteers, and sometimes some of our teams have a coach and then they have a volunteer assistant coach. So if they can coordinate with each other where one of them rides the bus and then they drive the other coach back, or if we have two coaches, two teams going and there's two coaches going, we're just going to ask that if the coaches can coordinate some return home transportation, that of course is ideal. That would be our first choice. But if that can't work for whatever reason, then we are asking parents to volunteer. We have a handful of away games left this year for the girls basketball games, and Terry has a schedule that is full. So we have volunteers on all of our remaining away games. But next year we want to kind of look at how can we improve that process, especially for the games that are further away and the kids are on the buses for a longer period of time.
And the volunteers have to get background checks before they ride the bus then?
That would be ideal because there is a bus driver on the bus and the driver is technically the adult in charge. We're going to get the background check done, but it may not be done before they're on the bus with the kids, but they're not all. So we feel like the trade-off is worth it. But we want to put a little bit more formality around it for next year. And then there are things to discuss as we go down our action list, but it's kind of the informational part. Any other questions?
Thank you. All right, we'll go on to the action items then. Consideration of resignation of Erin Keats, middle school paraprofessional. So we need to entertain a motion to accept her resignation.
Do we know anything behind it? Anything behind
She
it?
finished an advanced degree and has employment opportunities that her degree aligns to. So she just graduated with a master's and wants to do work that coordinates with that degree. She's still going to be working with students. It's a degree working with visually impaired students. So we may still end up seeing her around, but it's a great opportunity for her professionally, and it's what she went to school for.
And I would imagine that we need another para. Looks like there's a couple
We-
different paras on here.
We are going to need another para. The principals and I will talk tomorrow about, because technically we still need two. Because we replaced this one and there's the one that we didn't replace all the way back in November or December. So there may be two on next month's agenda to finish out the year. So we will need to hire at least one.
Yes, so that one never got hired. I'll make a motion for the resignation.
I'll second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Second action item, consideration of new hire Alexa Dubois, elementary paraprofessional. So we do have a,
Do you have one para
we
then?
have.
So this is one. So we were down two. This brings us back down to being down one.
One in elementary and one in middle school, probably.
So now we need one in elementary and we need one in middle school.
Do we have any background on this one at all?
What's that?
That would be a Richard.
Alexa. Yeah. Yeah, she's, I think. No, that's not the right one, but, no, she actually is kind of a go-getter, I think. She doesn't really have much experience with kids. She wants to try it out, give it a go. We recruited her, one of our paras in the life skills program recruited her here. And yeah, been waiting a very long time for her background check to clear. Yeah, been like, I think it's on the 3rd week now, or something like that for that to come in. But
Why do you suppose that is, Richard?
I wish I knew. Wish I knew somebody over there.
That's what's holding up our teacher license as well. So I don't know if they've just got behind. But she's not the only one.
I'll make a motion for the new hire, Alexa.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Next action item, consideration of new hire Isabel as assistant clerk. Did you want to explain that, Cindy?
Yes, so so last month we had the resignation of Laura, who was the front secretary. We had 3 internal applicants. Brooke Ells was one of those internal applicants, and Cecilia and I discussed all 3 of our applicants. Felt like Brooke was a great fit for that. It's actually what she originally came to work here for, and then because Brooke is fantastic, she ended up in that assistant clerk position, but she really wanted to go back to be the secretary. So that is what created the clerk opening. It was also advertised internally. We had no internal interest, and we had 1 applicant externally. So Cecilia and Brooke and I did that interview. She has experience working with payroll and some general bookkeeping. So she has kind of the technical knowledge that we would need to build off of. She also, just in her rapport with the 3 of us, seemed like a great fit, which is a concern for me because we have such a great thing in the office with all of our ladies. And sometimes I feel like fit is almost more important than skill because we can teach skills. So she's got both. And she will start, she is giving her current employment next Monday, so the 20th. She had some medical things going on at home and wanted to give her current business plenty of notice. So she'll get to jump in and learn some things.
Motion to hire Isabel for assistant clerk.
Yep, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Next, consideration of the proposed 23-24 school calendar, which, Cindy, would you kind of go on, explain that to us?
So the school calendar. Did you? Okay. So you guys have a link to that. My computer has decided to, if we do its own little thing. Yes, so here's just some visual aids.
Thank you.
So the school calendar, so I started having conversations with Alicia Hamill, who had worked on the calendar in previous years and knows lots of things. So she was my kind of go-to to get things started. She formed a committee at my request, we had a meeting as a committee to discuss several things. So I brought a couple of proposals that had some of the holidays already set up, some of the PIR days set up. And then as a committee, we discussed specifically conferences, because this year elementary had conferences at some point, and the middle school had some conferences. And we got feedback that that was could be very difficult for some families. So we wanted to streamline and have more consistent conferences. The solution for that was some early release days, which you see there are 5, 3 in the fall, 2 in the spring. We also discussed at length early start versus early release versus late start. So in our discussion as a committee, we really could not come up with one way being better than the other. Both have very valid points. Both have very valid challenges. So we felt like, since as a school, they were both equally as impactful, that we would see what families thought. So we put out a quick poll. We got over 600 responses, which is on the sheet that you have, that first little chart. So we had 660 responses. You can see it was a pretty tight race, but based on our community results, the community wants to stick with the late starts on Friday. So that made that decision for us. From there, I sent the staff 2 calendar options. The first option had a 5-day Thanksgiving with an end date of June 11th. Option B was 3-day Thanksgiving with an end date of June 7th. And the staff response, which you can see also is the second chart, was calendar B, to go with the 3-day Thanksgiving and the earlier June release. Some points, just so that you are aware of calendar development. So we are required for our accreditation purposes to meet for a certain number of hours every year. And we kind of create a bank of time that we use for the late starts, the early releases. And then we also have them for some emergency cases. So we don't want to create such a tight calendar that we don't have any spare minutes. So we do have some spare time, so that if we had to have a late start, so let's say the propane leak had been worse than what it was on a Wednesday, we decided for the safety of students, we're going to do a 2-hour late start. That 2 hours of time would come out of our bank of minutes. And we wouldn't have to make up that time later, and it wouldn't impact our accreditation status. So we do have some spare time for emergency
Spare
purposes.
time, do you like bank into it then? I mean,
So what we have remaining, if I remember my numbers correctly, is about 675 minutes.
and how many do we have to have or whatever for the?
The recommendation I was given was 2 days worth. And we've got, it's just under 675 minutes, it's just under 2 days.
How many for like the whole year?
The whole years we had 45 hours. I'm going from hours to minutes, sorry.
Okay. Yeah,
So,
that's okay.
so we had 45
So we have to
hours.
have 45 hours of class time.
No, we have 45 hours in excess.
Okay.
So those 45 hours got distributed over the late starts, the early releases for conferences, the early release before winter break, and the early release for the last day of school. After plugging in all of those dates, we have about 675, if I remember correctly, extra minutes. So if we had to have a late start tomorrow, that would come out of those bank of extra minutes. We don't want to push it too close, because if we do, then we have to start taking away late starts, or we have to use holidays or add to the school year. So we would rather not have to alter the schedule. We would rather just be able to say it's built in.
What happens to those 2 days if we don't use them? We don't get to take them off the end, do we?
We don't, but the benefit is that 675 minutes of instructional time that students have.
Right, yeah.
So,
They get an extra couple of days of school, but that's too bad.
right,
We don't get to take it out.
we don't. And I was
I knew the answer to that.
kind of brainstorming some ideas earlier with some teachers. PLC time is really valuable, and how could we get more PLC time? And we're just playing with the math. An extra 5 minutes every day is 11 hours over the course of the school year. So people don't realize how quickly, little pieces of time add up to big pieces of time.
I know, this is just going off. We have a friend who their kids go to Smith Valley. They used to be the early out Wednesdays. They got rid of all their early out Wednesdays and they just take an extra whole day off during the month.
So that was considered. And for the purposes of what we are saying that we're using that time for is collaboration for professional learning communities. The people who design professional learning communities, one of the cornerstones of that process being effective is that teachers meet weekly. And it's really recommended that they meet for a minimum of 1 hour a week. So our teachers are getting to meet for 45 minutes a week. PLCs should happen in such a way that teachers are looking at data on a very regular basis so that they can modify their instruction on a very regular basis. Moving forward over the next couple of years, the PLC process is something that I want to make more of a priority and more of a more formalized process and alignment with learning by doing, which is the go-to book for PLCs. And in order to do that, we will have to have a weekly.
And that's what goes on Friday mornings.
Yes, and right now, both the elementary and the middle schools, they each have a process for doing PLCs. I'd like to see us streamline that a little bit more and be more consistent of higher fidelity so that there is that consistency district-wide, but that's really a 2 to 3 year process at minimum.
What's your thoughts on it? Or any input from anybody, teacher wise?
Was there also a poll for early release / late start for the staff as well, or? was it
No,
the
that just went out to
community?
the community. We started, because we felt like any changes that are on a regular occurrence like that is more impactful to families because a teacher's workday is going to be the same
Either way.
Now, there's lots of discussion around at an elementary standpoint, students are freshest in the morning. An early release would be great at the elementary level because late start, they're coming in and they're already, elementary kids are getting a little bit foggy because they learn best in the morning. The opposite is true at the middle school level. Middle schoolers just in those teenage years, they actually do better if they sleep in a little bit longer and start their day a little bit later. So that was kind of the rock and the hard spot that we were in is what benefits one demographic of student wasn't necessarily the same that benefited another. So we couldn't come up with a definitive, this is what's going to be best for kids. When it came to one or the other choice. And even whenever we discussed what we perceive the impact on families to be, we couldn't come to a consensus on this is what's going to be best for families. So the margin's pretty slim. I mean, it's not even 5%, but we felt like this was the fairest way to make a determination. So the poll was sent out. I amended it within about an hour or so to let parents know that if they had feedback or concerns, to email me. And I got probably about over a dozen or so emails. I responded to every email that was sent. Most of them within the hour that I received them, even over the weekend. The things leading up to Friday that were the most common questions or concerns, put together a little blurb, got that to Kat. The reminder message that went out Saturday included that updated information just so that people were wondering. They got the common kind of update. So I tried to make sure that people were as informed as possible about the choices and given as much explanation as possible around late starts or early releases. Ultimately, it's one of those things that we are not going to have even a significant majority of people are happy one way or the other. But it is instructionally, it is a beneficial time for the teachers to have that as part of their work week.
There's 700 kids here, and it probably went out to both parents. That's 1,400 with 660 responses, right?
Right, but we have families that have anywhere from one child to 8 children.
That's true.
And it depends on how parents approached it. Like in my household, my husband would expect me to answer and then he wouldn't touch it. So I think the fact that we got 660 responses is actually pretty good.
I think I just seen whenever this got posted, I think on Facebook or something, I think there was a little pushback that more people wanted like the early out Wednesdays. I don't know.
Most of the emails that I got as far as just email feedback and not necessarily a question, the feedback was that they preferred, the people who took the time to email me, emailed that they preferred an early release on Wednesdays to coordinate with School District 5. But the votes went to late start Fridays. It's a tough one.
There's another thing that isn't really obvious here, but I thought it was a good idea that Cindy had. If you'll notice at the end of each of the long vacations, there's a PIR day. So after Christmas vacation, there's a PIR day where the kids don't come back, but the teachers do. So that gives the teachers time to get organized for the rest of the remainder of the year after they had the long vacation, both spring break and
winter break.
And winter break have the
so that gives families a little bit more time. Gives you time to get home and wash all that laundry.
Most of them probably ready for the kids to go back to school.
Yeah, they do.
But that gives the teachers.
We also didn't want,
I thought it's a good idea.
we didn't want a lot of interruptions to the week and maintain as much consistency as possible throughout the month. There are breaks, there's those little glimmers of light that we all kind of look forward to as far as a 3-day weekend. But it also is helpful to the teachers' mental health to be able to get in and get their rooms ready. The feedback from administrators was asking for PIR time during the winter and spring because right now there isn't any. So they're kind of stuck doing what training they can get done in the fall, but then there's also training needs in the spring. So this gives them that opportunity to meet with their staffs and reflect on what has happened so far and what they need to do, to finish out the year in a strong way.
Anybody ready to make a motion to accept that calendar as it's presented?
So options, if there are still questions, we can send this back to committee. if that is something that you want to pursue, I ask that you give us a targeted list of things that you would like addressed so that we can go into our committee and have meaningful discussion. There is a committee and I can pull them back together. But I just want to make sure that we have something to talk about if we did that.
What's your thought, should, I mean, for teachers and see.
I don't know if it'll entirely make a
Yeah,
huge difference,
change it.
right?
I
I mean, I
think
have my own personal biases, but I'm only one of 660.
I
Well,
agree.
actually,
I do too.
default one out of 660 because I think somebody else voted for me, so.
And-
For the
And
family.
technically, the teachers could have voted in
Yeah.
that as
They may
well. Because it was an open poll. It was open to ultimately anyone who got the email.
I was actually shocked by the results, to be honest with you. I figured people would line up with school district 5, but.
I thought the same thing.
Especially because most of us have kids here and in high school.
Mhm.
So we're literally, we have two different calendars that we are trying to
Yeah. that's cool.
juggle.
Right.
Mhm.
And you could have voted more than once, so I don't know if that played into it too, but I know people that did vote more than once, so.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that was an option.
Everyone had equal opportunity to vote more than once.
I was surprised by the results.
You're
too. I
one
think
person
that
who
made
voted
it
600
a little
times.
bit.
Yeah.
I was surprised too by the results, so.
I really was, but.
And I don't know a good way of securing that within a Google form.
The only thing you could do is you could force people to put in their email addresses, but then that is a lot of work to try and match up email addresses to students, like to parents,
To verify.
to
Well, that,
verify.
and if people really intended to vote more than once, they could just use multiple email addresses. That's not that hard.
Right, so, and
Create
then
a new
trying
Google
to that,
one
like I
or a
said,
new
then
Gmail in like 4 seconds, so.
if you have one that isn't, then you have to try and delete that one.
It's not.
It would be a lot of man hours
See,
to
way more
make
work than
that
it's worth.
accomplished.
So is that the concern, the late start versus the early release?
I would say that's probably my biggest concern. Just some of the feedback.
And ultimately, I mean, my understanding is the school board approves the calendar. So,
We're missing 2 of them today.
yes,
Yeah, so maybe we table it for
Do it.
whenever they're back.
so we
We
have
do
a full
have
board.
time, right?
Yeah.
We do.
Yeah.
Well, luckily, this is early in the year still, and we could do this a little bit.
Yeah, why don't we table it until they're back, just because there is only 3 of us tonight.
And meanwhile, you may be able to visit with some, well, you have a feeling that your constituents would have gone the other way with that Wednesday.
I don't know.
I don't know everybody, so.
I know.
I will
did-
say,
I don't want.
I do not have students here, and so I did not get an email to vote, and like neither did like Molly and stuff. So I don't know if staff input was even, which I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but.
And so what I could do is, because the poll itself still exists, it's just closed to collecting responses. So we could reissue that out just to staff. I don't want to reopen it to families
That's fine,
because
I don't think so.
No,
either.
because
Yeah.
then the same 660 people who voted are just gonna vote again.
Yeah.
But we could let staff vote and then add those numbers to the parent numbers and see how that impacts the percentages. And if you're wanting to table this until the next meeting, when all 5 members are here, that gives us plenty of time to do that.
I think we do that.
I think it's reasonable.
Good idea. Is there anything else that is necessarily concerning that you would like for us to address in the meantime?
I don't
is-
think so. That was
No, I
just the
like-
feedback I heard from was just more or less the early releases first. So maybe we just like open that more to.
And that was
teachers
a
and
big
staff
part of our
here.
conversation in the committee was
I mean, if we can't determine which ones,
that that parents have to have 2 schedules.
yeah, it seems like you did go the
we go the other way, but maybe not.
Okay.
I
So-
do like the PIR days at the end of those breaks. I think that's nice to extend those just slightly.
Well, we have to have those training days. So trying to be thoughtful about where we put them. Places in the calendar that would be meaningful as far as how the teachers can train and be, adjust their instruction in response to their training. But then also what we don't want necessarily either is a real choppy calendar where every 2 weeks.
Or something else, yeah.
Right.
Well, and I like being done on the 7th instead of the 11th.
I agree. I would rather be done on Friday than
The staff. For the most part. I agree with
As
that.
well, yeah.
Okay, so I'll make a motion to table the calendar to our next meeting or within the next couple of months.
I mean, we can have that by the March meeting.
Okay.
Bring in those new numbers. And I'll have it separated out so you can see what the parent vote is versus and there's gonna be some replication. I mean, there are some staff members who have voted in the parent vote. I think from a statistical standpoint, it's such a small number that it's not gonna be
Well,
significant.
just a guide anyway, so.
Mhm.
Yeah.
All right, so
Thank
yeah, I'll
you.
just make a motion to table it for now and we'll figure it out the next meeting when everybody's here.
Second motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, so that will be tabled and we'll get a staff survey out. We'll have more information to work with. All right, call for trustee and levy election.
So
We currently have 2 positions open on the trustee side, so Stephanie and Gretchen are both up for reelection. Stephanie's is a 1-year position, Gretchen's will be a 3-year position.
And we're doing this, there's a deadline that we have to get the resolution in.
Yep.
Even if nobody else decides to run for the school board and we can just click the members back in.
Yeah,
We
so-
still have to get this resolution going. We can turn around and not have the election if we don't need to, but we have to do it legally now. So what we're
Yes.
doing is, we're just,
And the resolution
Open the
appoints
door.
me as the election administrator, which is always the case. And so if it comes to not needing the election, then I can cancel it up until. I'll make a motion for trustee and levy election.
I'll second it.
in favor. Aye.
questions about the levy part.
Are we doing one? Do we have to know that right now?
No, and that's why I wanted to make sure we did discuss it a little bit. So
Okay.
it is, again, one of those timeline issues of if we don't do this part, by the time we realize, oh goodness, we need a
Yeah.
levy,
Mhm.
we can't do this part. So, so
I guess I
I've,
was just falling on you guys for that.
I've reached out to people who know more than me. And we can, if we realize we're not gonna need the funds, we can cancel the levy before we even run it. If we run the levy and it passes, and then we realize, oh, our Title I status has changed, we don't need the levy money, we can actually decline it. So even if it passes, we don't necessarily have to take it, but once we take it, we've taken it. So it's one of those things we kind of want to have our feet on the path, but we get to decide how far down the path we go.
So when do we have to have all that decided by, like, number wise for the levy and all that?
You said it was different because it's a legislative.
So, yeah, so the trustee election will take place the first Tuesday in May. If we can get our numbers together and run the levy election at the same time, that would be ideal, 'cause it's a lot of work. But being it's a legislative year, we have until July 31st to run our levy. So we would potentially then run 2 elections this year.
So as long as we have this in place, though,
We can
we're
do,
covered.
yes.
Right.
We can at least do it if you.
The next one, consideration of Terry Darrenfield as Love and Logic instructor. adult education.
So
Now,
this is our adult ed grant, similar to earlier in the year. We brought one for Tara Measure, where she does the adult fitness class. It's paid for out of a grant that we can only pay for this type of thing. So it's not money out of our general fund, and it's a class that Terry has done in the past.
Do we know how well it was attended in the past?
I don't, that's a great question. but
Terry's not here.
And it's for parents and
So I think there is a parent version and there is like a teacher version. So the teacher version would be open to any educator in the area. So the teachers at Smith Valley wanted to come over and participate, they could.
The teacher one was well attended, and I know that when we had the class before, we would recommend to parents, it was kind of a nice avenue, because if we saw struggles parents were having with kids, we could recommend the class. I think it was very well attended.
So there's the two, the parenting, the Love and Logic way, and then Love and Logic classroom. So those would be the two we'd be looking at.
So the costs that are listed here, the 900 and 1,200, is that the total cost for the classes? And then we are collecting the 12 and 15 per family
There has been a fee for
for
attending.
attending? Yeah.
Even for teachers, we pay for our books in the past. Oh, I don't think I. Oh, maybe when it was like.
I don't understand that.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't understand this. And $15 charge per family in the Love and Logic for the classroom.
There's a book you go through.
So they're purchasing their materials for the class. And we would be paying for Terry's time, and there is a general registration fee.
What's the $12 charge per family after 20?
because she only gets 20. She must only get 20 workbooks. And so then she, if they want extra material or she needs it after 20.
So if we have more than 20 people, then it's $12
Okay.
per family. Okay.
Just to cover extra costs of extra materials, I would guess.
Yeah, so that she's not sure. I guess she's not charging the family, right? She's just.
I would recommend if there's money in the fund to pay for all of the materials, that we pay for the materials. It's a fund that we can only use for this type of activity. It's to support parents in being better parents. The classroom version is not just beneficial to our staff, but beneficial to any teaching staff in the area.
How much money is in the account?
Right now, we only have Tara's adult fitness class, and I think there's like 17,000 in that. And
This is if it's accrued over there.
yeah, it just, I mean, for Tara, we only pay for salaries. I think maybe last year we got a few supplies. It has, there's not a lot that really comes in and out of that.
She's pretty well stocked in materials.
How much
Yeah.
goes into that account every year?
Look into that. I don't know.
But it
It's part of our
has,
permissive levy, so I know on that one, we've levied the smallest amount.
Okay.
Because it just doesn't get used as much. But I can certainly find out how much we levy.
Do you think it's more than
Oh, yes,
per year?
yes.
Anyway,
Yeah.
'cause we keep
If I
stockpiling
had
a little
to,
bit.
if I had to guess, I would say we probably levy maybe 3,000 in a year.
Okay.
So yeah, and that's a guess.
And it has to be used for this kind of thing.
Yeah.
right.
Gotcha.
We
Cindy,
can move it, and use it for other.
Well, you know, when we're filling out that application for the Title I consideration, this would look good there, wouldn't it? Because they look for community.
We would look
involvement.
at this.
So when, you know, those guys are
So this
looking
type
at
of
the,
activity, having Terry keep sign-in sheets, the same thing for our math family nights that are coming up, keeping track of the number of families who participate and those types of things. Even Tara's adult fitness classes. What what opportunities do we currently have available to families that families are taking advantage of? And then how can we grow those opportunities and do more? Because a big part of Title I is community involvement and getting
So this,
not just students involved in school, but families coming in and doing things.
this would be a good one for that. That might push us over the edge for Title I. You never know.
So to answer your question, I looked back at the 21-22 school year, and our levy brought in 4,800 for that year.
Thank you.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, consideration of a cell phone stipend for administration.
Speak this is current board policy on administrative use of district-owned cellular phones, and I know that it's in some staff members' contracts. So you'll note that this policy was adopted in 2015, so it's been around for a little while, but it also hasn't been updated. Because of the expectation that administrative and some clerical staff do school business outside of school, that they are provided with a cell phone. I know from my own experience, I've been provided with a cell phone in all of my administrative positions, and I am not a two-phone person. I don't know how people keep up with two phones. The school one always would end up with a dead battery on my purse, and I conducted all of my business on my personal phone. And looking at other contracts with other districts and in other states as well, most districts have gotten away from providing the cell phone itself and now just provide a stipend to the people that they expect to be available on their phones outside of the workday. The cost of most stipends is about $50 a month per person. The cost of our cell plan is like $49 and some change. And the district is not liable for the phone. So if I break my phone, I have to go out and replace it. If I have a district phone and something happens to it, then it's part of the district's liability, essentially, because it's in my contract with the district for my cell phone. So it is up for consideration to change the policy to allow for stipends or maybe a choice. We can discuss wording. I didn't put together recommended wording yet because I wanted to kind of see where the board was on this. But I can bring to the next meeting some proposed language and then we look at it from a policy standpoint.
So right now, does the school district have like a phone policy that you guys are on? Is that how it is right now?
No, so previously there were maybe 5 that were on the cell phone plan through Verizon. When I started, it was not anything that I was ever told about for several months that I should have been on that plan. And so now that some of our older staff has left the district, our plan is dwindling down. And so
So is that the $49 a month, I guess that you're referring to,
Yes.
is ours, is your school plan?
yes,
And
Laura
who's-
was the last person on the plan. Right
Yeah.
now, there are no employees left on the school plan.
And you're not on the plan right now.
so several staff members have said, well, I don't want to switch from maybe AT&T or whatever they have to Verizon for that purpose. So then they just said, well, I'll just, figure it out. And
You'd have to either move your plan or
Right.
move your service or take a second phone.
right. And the policy, I believe, states that I think it's $100 towards a new device, but they're not like new model devices. So it'd be 2-year-old devices. Whereas the stipend would make it to where if I want a new phone, I go buy my own phone. So that takes that off of the school plan. But yeah, so Laura was the last one on the plan, and there's.
So most, the stipends you said are about $50 per person. And who would all be on the plan then?
So that would be the administrative staff, so myself and the two principals. Cecilia as the district clerk and business manager. Brooke, because she handles all of the substitutes, transportation, any of those types of things that happen. And then the athletic director, so Terry. Oh, and Phil.
Because he gets the pouring in calls.
He's the guy who's first on the security list. So
Was that like 10 people?
so there's the three of us. You and Brooke, Terry, so seven.
And we currently have, we had the Verizon plan budgeted in, so this really just,
Would replace that.
So it's been budgeted for all year, just because we would rather have budgeted for it and never used it than pop up later on and go, oh yeah, what about that?
I'm more of a fan of a stipend than providing a phone or providing a service. It seems reasonable for those that are required to have their phone for other reasons, or for school related reasons that they're here.
And all of those people listed, those positions, it's more about the position than it is the person. They have responsibilities outside of school that we would expect responded to. Athletic director, I've had more. Terry doesn't call me because she's having a curriculum conundrum, but she'll call when there's something going on with athletics, because most of that, all of that occurs outside of school hours. And then as administrators, we're expected to be at least accessible pretty much any time,
And then
any
the
reasonable time.
new security program.
The new security program that is also on the agenda, it is operable from phones as well. Of course, there's an app that goes with it. You can unlock doors from your couch at home if you want to, or lock them. Either way.
So this is not what we're approving.
No.
No, this, I wanted you to see what the current policy is. So if you, and so I don't know. Is this an action? Are you approving a stipend, or do you want me to bring you language next time and update the policy first?
I think we look at the language in the policy, but I think I'm open to doing a
I am
stipend.
too.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think what we could do though is approve getting rid of this and bring in a new
New language or something. Yeah.
in the
More
form
around
of
that.
this stipends.
And then we'd have to approve at the next meeting.
Have to adopt a new policy.
Yeah,
I suppose we don't need to do anything.
This is just
In essence,
information.
Because until you
in
actually
essence,
have
we
something
can
for the
table
meeting,
this
do it
to,
anyway, so
can we table this too?
Yeah.
Until the next meeting?
Yeah.
How about that?
it's a good idea though.
And then we can get the language, then we'll have the language right in front of us.
I'll second that.
Okay, all in favor? Aye. Okay, consideration of transportation claims.
So this is the report that I send to the state. So 50% of our transportation comes from the state, half of it comes from the county through the levy. So this is the claim that I'm submitting for the. Yeah, we'll do it again in June.
So they give us $54,000.
Motion to approve the transportation claims.
Second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Consideration of the Systems Northwest quote.
So this is in excess of $10,000. It would be paid for out of our building reserve, which is the reserve fund that we had to do capital projects, basically. So anything that would be considered a repair or an upgrade to the building itself. We have the money in that account. We have been trying to, everything that can be paid for this year out of that account, we're paying for with that account. So what this would address and this, you're gonna wanna look at this later, don't, I wouldn't really even open it right now. So I had Kat do some research into security, local security companies, because our current company is a little bit of a challenge to work with. We have the door outside of Richard's office that has been glitchy all year. Our current company basically has just not serviced it. So we met with, Kat and I did with Systems Northwest, discussed our needs, discussed kind of where we are. And she did a walk through the building with him. He tried to fix the door. We don't even have a contract with him. And he at least looked at it for us. Because so many of these companies, they close their systems where you can't just pop in and reprogram it. Things have to be replaced. So the proposal you have would use as much existing hardware as possible, but it would require some hardware updates. It would fix the door at the end of the elementary school. We would also be adding 2 electronic locks. So the cattle gate door right now is only accessible by a key. And then the middle school exterior doors that go out the back are also key locked. One of the things from the security assessment was to add electric locks to those doors because it makes it easier to get kids in. So if we had something that happened outside and we needed the children in quickly, then it's a lot faster to scan that card and get in. The other part of this would be we would be moving our basically our monthly service to Systems Northwest as well. So they would be replacing our current company. Already more impressed with their customer service. Ideally, I would like to, over the next several years, move as many of our services as possible to them. So our security cameras, our alarm system, fire systems, basically any system that they cover, so that all of those systems are under the same umbrella and we're working with the same people.
So do we have to do each one of these line items, like the
No.
first one, are these different?
That's different.
I mean,
The first one's to update everything, the second one's for the new door here,
that's what I'm wondering, do you have to do each one of
third
these?
one's for the new door there, and then I think it's all just one proposal though, because they put a grand total on here.
I think the grand total is what we go for.
And then, so our subscription fees, we would be paying the $960, $240, and $240, all of that every year.
What's our
So the
current
other-
fees? Like
So
recurring?
The grand
480
total
960.
for everything is $20,351. So that's updating all of the doors. That's the annual subscription, going ahead and pay for a year. The labor, the shipping, the whole kit and caboodle to get us started with them is the $20,000.
Yeah, I
And
think
then-
she's just looking right
And then the
below that.
1440 is the yearly.
Right, so that reoccurring cost.
What are we paying right now for the same service that we have that don't do anything?
It's like $66 a month, but that's only for the monitoring. If they cannot fix anything, then it's.
It's extra.
It was cheaper
That's
per
1445.
month to go through North. Like their overall fee was cheaper per month than our current one, and their on-site work was like $20-some per hour cheaper than our current ones.
And that was one of our major problems with our security was the doors. So we'd be addressing one of the major problems that we've got here.
So even with the subscription, our upfront cost may be more, will be more. But the quality of what we're gonna get out of it is, and it makes it more predictable. I'd rather have, this is what we're gonna pay than surprise.
How much is in that?
fund that we're gonna pull it out of? I mean, there's plenty of funds in there to cover it.
Yes, there is. I think after like this year, we're like 130,000.
And there's
And
also
this is
possible,
budgeted into that, like, the end of the year then? Is this budgeted?
No, so we don't create a budget necessarily for that
Not for the
account.
building reserve.
Okay.
then there's possibility, then we can pull in some of our other alarm systems like fire alarm and the cameras. things like
Eventually, that would
Yes.
be, as these systems need to be updated and improved. My preference, unless something changes, would be to go through the same company.
Tie them all
We
in
pulled
together
our
eventually.
fire from the current company a few months ago just because of the service. It was just awful.
And
And
who'd you
so,
go through with that then?
it's A&D fire. And I think even that technician has kind of tried to look at our doors.
The
and systems,
doors.
Trying to help with what we can't get help with from the other company.
Who was the fire before?
Kenco, Mountain. They have like 8 different.
I mean, I think it's a good safety measure. We should do it.
The current system is extremely cumbersome. Like if we needed to change the schedule, we have this really old brick laptop that we drag out that we had to have Cal come in the beginning of the school year and show us how to reset. It's a dinosaur. The system, the day that we had to close school because there wasn't any electricity because it's all hosted on the cloud. There's no electricity. The electricity may be an issue, but let's say we were closed for weather and electricity wasn't an issue. I can get on my phone and shut the school down and lock all the doors because technically the doors are open because that's what the schedule says, is that it's a regular school day. But if we needed to shut the building down and lock it for whatever reason, we could do that remotely. We needed to open it, or if, a rec basketball team shows up and there's not someone, they're supposed to be here, but the person who's gonna open the door, wasn't able to be here, then I could open it from home.
Well, I'm assuming that this back door then would be left locked all the time and then just key it in when they needed to, which would leave it less likely that somebody's gonna prop it open or do something like that. So I think it's more of a safety.
Same thing with this,
Same with the one over
the
there.
elementary door, and then
These
the
front doors that
door,
get propped open too.
right, the door outside of Richard's office that has been glitchy all year. Sometimes it's open, sometimes it's not.
And the first part of this, I know we're adding the 2 new doors, which are separate line items on his little proposal, but I'm just assuming fixing all the other doors is wrapped up into that first one. The 12,913.
From my understanding, this is a conversion for everything.
Okay, I like it.
I'll make a motion to approve systems request.
I will accept that motion.
All those in favor? Aye. The consideration of the MTSBA renewal.
Here. So, they had sent you the invoice and that pretty little flyer that says this is what you get for our membership. After discussing with Dr. Richard, the collective bargaining, how we had to pay for that additionally because it wasn't included in our membership. So we kind of discussed what do we get for our membership. I emailed MTSBA and that email is their response as to what we get, which I didn't know, I didn't feel it was very helpful, but it came either late Friday or over the, I can't remember when I got it, but I didn't have time to put it in the packet. So I printed the email so you guys can see just that explains what we get for our membership.
The last time we talked about this, do you remember?
What,
A year and a half ago or whatever, it
Yeah.
was, the benefit, I think, was more in the legal consultation than anything else.
It was.
And that's not
And
helpful.
the,
And
well, and the policy.
The
The
update of
policy
policy.
part is really, in my mind and my experience, when I've needed to contact MTSBA about anything, the legal portion of it has not been incredibly helpful.
Depends on who you get a hold of. I've noticed.
Well, I can't hold,
You can't get hold of anybody now.
they won't take a phone call for me. I have to email a generic
Yep. Like, that's changed.
rude.
I haven't used it since that change.
So
There's no, well,
And you had to pay for that, this latest training?
we did,
right, even though it lists that that's one of the things they'll help us with.
but apparently we have to have,
And that's what I was trying to ask them.
Part of the
What are the
package.
packages?
Yeah.
Right.
Like,
She didn't know that. I mean, we didn't know
Right.
we hadn't paid for a labor's relation.
right, and that's kind of what I asked. And I didn't really get an answer.
Don't they usually review like all those changes that we have? Isn't that the,
Yes.
like where that comes from?
That's why
they do the
that's what we
policy.
And that's why we kept it last year, if I'm remembering
That's right.
correctly, was for all that review stuff.
Yep.
That's right. That was the reason. And then we get an hour if we have.
An
that
hour
isn't
per
correct?
incident.
Correct. Yeah.
Just
And
an
then-
hour with the lawyer.
So did you use it recently with the incident?
I reached the limit on an incident. Unfortunately, I had pretty much everything I needed to know at that point, so I didn't have to go over the hour. But Cecilia and I also met with our insurance company, and they have some legal resources that we can use that are part of our insurance package. So the next time, when there is a next time where I need legal advice, I will contact someone off of that list.
Is there is there a limit on that one too? You know, like this.
I
is
don't,
just
I think
an
they kind of
hour.
evaluate it and then they let me know.
Uh-huh.
So I think we have a retain, if I understand, I think we have a retainer with that lawyer.
Right.
Should be an
That's part of it.
indication why the school board associations are just falling apart, because these are dropping like lines everywhere, like states are dropping out of the national one and
Well, and
schools are
so much,
dropping out of
if
the
you read
state ones
this
and.
and the little infographic that was included, a lot of it has to do with advocacy,
Yeah,
which is,
not being a voice for us.
and that's, it's, you want people who are gonna advocate for schools,
Yeah.
but I don't, that's not central to my needs as a superintendent. Because there are lots of organizations in the state that advocate for public education.
These are all new elected officials. From last year,
Right.
their MTSBA officials are all new.
Right, and I have heard that there has been some, well, that is their officers. the
Yeah, these are
people-
just officers, which,
When I email legal, so if I have a question about any legal issue, I get a reply back from one of the lawyers.
right.
But even that reply is reply all, so that they're creating a paper trail, and I understand that, but sometimes it's nice to just pick up the phone and call and ask a simple question and get a simple answer.
So whenever you say you email in, does it go to like that community thing, then gets like broadcasted out to everybody? Is that how it works? So you can't really even have a private.
I email legal@mtsba.org, and whoever maybe specializes in that area or is the lucky one who checks their email, that's who I get a response from. But when they reply, they hit reply all. So it goes to whoever is on that email group that receives legal@mtsba.
All of
And they are not responsive to you.
They're responsive, but they're responsive in attorney language, and sometimes I just need, it slows down the process to have to email them my question, and then they email me back some clarifying questions. So then I reply to their email, and then I have to wait for them to reply back to that one. And it's it's so inefficient. Whereas if every other district I worked for, if I needed to talk to an attorney, I picked up the phone and I called the attorney's office and I got somebody on the phone. Hey, here's my question. Teacher asked me about this contract. Here's the contract language. Oh, do this, this, and this.
And you have other resources for that to
Yes.
go to.
Interesting, because it is a change. I mean, when I first started on the board, it was, I mean, I got a call from the president of TSBA a couple times, like we sat and chatted on the phone. And more than an hour.
I don't think the one time I spoke to anyone on the phone was long enough for them to tell me to email legal ad from TSBA.
And I know it was probably just who that person was. Milton was just that kind of a guy that he would call you back if you had a question. But even when I talked to other people, it was pretty easy to get a hold of them before. So it's definitely a change.
Well, and what I've heard that may account for that, what I've heard from other superintendents is that they will talk to trustees on the phone, but they will not talk to superintendents.
And that's not okay.
No,
Good questions too.
but we, you know, the truth of the matter is, if we tried to get a hold of them now, Justin, we have the same situation. We would have to go through the email chain. We couldn't just call them on the phone. Because I was with you, you know, we went through all that controversy. It was one thing to call that number and you got a real voice with me in.
Mhm.
And you
And
would
it's
just,
not that way anymore.
oh. Apparently I haven't tried, to be honest, but apparently from what Cindy said.
Trial this.
What's that?
So maybe one of us should trial this.
Maybe
just to
we
call
should.
for
Just give them
see
a
what
call
happens.
tomorrow and say, hey,
Yeah.
how's it going?
Hey.
I
Nothing,
think
I was
Call and
just
ask
checking
what we
in.
get for our membership package.
Yes.
Well, I didn't get an answer.
That's what they seem to, yeah. They give you a whole bunch about.
I'm just
legal
surprised
costs,
because
but
she said, oh, well,
on
I'm
the
not putting
bottom of that.
like a package together for you. I'm
That's
like, well,
really disheartening that
like, what would it
asked for
cost
more
us if we wanted that
information
labor
and
and
they
industry one? Like,
gave
what,
nothing.
yeah, like how do we?
We
determine if
assumed
we want
that that was part of the function of MTSBA was to provide us some workshops.
And all I really wanted to know was like package A consists of this, and it's this much, package B is this much. That's all I really wanted. I didn't.
Right.
How do
Here's
they
the à la
base their
carte.
fees on? What do they base it on?
That's what I, well, and I think,
Well, they do.
didn't we approve the fees?
Oh,
last
we
meeting?
got that whole long piece of paper
Yeah, and it
from
Explain that
MTSBA.
we had to like. actually
Remember
approve
that?
it Or something, right?
That was,
No,
no,
We just voted if they
You were
increased
voting.
the
Or
fees or
technically
not.
your organization.
what we approved was their,
Fee
Rate
increase.
increase for next year.
and that's, we approved that
Yeah.
at
But
the, at the last.
But we only
meeting. I
approved
have
it as
here.
knowing we didn't actually have to do
Yeah.
it.
This is what we approved is just how the duties. are
Yeah,
And it
just
tells
their
us,
increase in
it
price.
says on there, I guess, how they do charge or like assess the fees, but it doesn't say what we get for that pack, you know, like, what do we get?
Well, and they, even their little flyer here is like savings of, but like, does that mean that we pay for some of those things? We just cost less than what they think we can get
Well, it's-
somewhere else, or
Well,
is
it's
it
like my
all
car
wrapped up in that?
insurance.
Yeah,
I get online and I check my policy and it tells me your premium for this coverage is this much, your premium for this coverage is this much. And, you know, it's pretty much itemizes everything that my policy covers. That's more of what we were expecting is,
Mhm.
you know, policy management. This is how much it costs. Your legal consultation costs this much. But that's not what we,
I don't know. I feel like I need more information on packages and.
yeah, I would too. And what's interesting is a lot of the stuff on their flyer too is like, oh, we advocated for these things, right? But we would get those whether we're a member of organization or not, right?
but they need our money to fund their.
Right.
I mean, I honestly don't feel like I would have, I don't know who I would go to, like say if you had a question, trustee wise. My
Let's-
lawyer
You know
doesn't
what, should we table this one and all of
doesn't
us try to
do,
get on
like,
the phone?
school board stuff, you know, I just don't know.
Maybe we should all, maybe in the meanwhile, see what happens if we try to call. If that really is truly the issue, if we need to have a trustee call, which is totally bogus, because that is not the way it should be. The superintendent's the one that's more likely to need the services than the school board at any point. in
Well,
time.
and I mean, this is just my opinion of hearsay, but it seemed as though when Cal would call previously, he would get to talk to somebody pretty easily.
Mhm.
And I think that they took that away though, because now, like, I had to ask you or Kat, like, who do I email? I couldn't even find it on the website,
Right.
like, and it's just legal at whatever it was.
Well, and you
so
have to
you
remember,
not
too,
being able to
Cal's
get a
been
hold of
here
them
for
is a
10
new thing.
years. You know, Cal had relationships with people and that could have very well been a possibility too, that because of his time here and his relationship with people.
But that's not.
No, I think there were phone
No, but
numbers.
that
on-
happens. and
It does, but that's
that's-
not
No,
okay.
there were phone numbers on the MTSBA website.
Yeah,
I mean, there were phone numbers you could call, and that's where he got. the
Table
phone
it then
numbers.
for now and do a little bit more research and try to call it and see if we can find phone numbers and.
and maybe hopefully we can get more information from them about what their packages actually
Yeah,
look
what
like
it,
and what we're
what it actually
getting
is
for them.
including and.
Maybe we're just not asking the question in a way that they understand.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm just asking it like a non-lawyer.
Take the teenage kid approach and just keep asking the same question over and over and over again in slightly different ways.
You failed. Try again.
Because they want more info about what we need. Give you the right information.
And all she was asking, what was your email exactly? Let me find it here.
I don't know, I feel like I need more info.
How much is their membership again a year? How we are paying?
5483. $5,000.
Just in the last year with like the issues that you've had, I mean, what do you think your lawyer bills we would be at?
Oh, I have.
And we don't know how much when we go to change our laws or go through all that gobbledygook for trying to get the laws changed and things, our bylaws changed. We don't know how much of that, how valuable they are in that respect, because that's behind the scenes stuff. Right? That they
So-
had to take care of to make sure that what we're doing is not.
Well, they
illegal.
sent out model policies, which we haven't had any this year.
Last year, last couple of years, you guys had, we had a lot.
There were a lot right at the beginning that
That's
had
right.
kind of rolled over from last school year to this
So
school year.
there's another thing.
So-
we have to do.
That,
Well, they have chaos going on in the state.
and if that's all we need them for, then that's fine. That's all I would prefer to pay for.
Right, so let's get a breakdown then, because I think that's kind of why we kept them on before was for those policies, because we were doing so many of them.
That's exactly why.
It is. So we have to know
Well, and
Yeah.
they're,
what they're.
well, we'll give you an hour of free legal advice. So if something catastrophe happens, we're gonna have to pay for it anyway.
That's right.
They're only gonna give you an hour of like,
And what's the
Fortunately,
rate?
nothing else has come up where I needed to contact anyone. But I am going to try out the attorneys from the insurance company.
So could you maybe just respond to this and let them know that we wanted like a breakdown
I
of
want an itemized.
itemized,
invoice.
yeah, of like what we're paying for, that our biggest thing is the policies, right?
Mhm.
And then, you know, how many hours of free legal advice do we get per, like, we need to see something more itemized.
We need something more than this.
Well, and that's what you said. I just found my
stuff
email.
that we get anyway.
I said, I received our invoice for our membership renewal. I'm curious what our membership includes and if there are different levels.
Yeah, there you
And
go.
Lance writes back, he says, separately, we distributed a membership value infographic and a memo from our officers you should have received. I'm copying Wendy. And then Wendy says, hi Cecilia, I've attached a member savings infographic.
That's the infographic.
That's it. Oh, that's not. And then she's like, it looks like West Valley also takes advantage of our MTSUIP program, which is the unemployment insurance. Which we were paying less than that. We need to check.
So that's a good figure, yeah, we can figure that piece out.
And the policy maintenance program.
That's the one we're talking about.
That's what we need.
And then she's like, and she wanted me to go over the roster, and she didn't send me the roster.
There's no attachment for that.
And so then she did send that back to me with the email that I sent to you guys. Oh,
I
and she
think-
did say, I'm working with Lance on providing more information to your board. Stay tuned. But that was, well, that's Friday.
I'll make a motion then to table that, get more info for the MTSBA renewal.
Like it. That motion, table it.
All in
Get more
favor?
info.
Aye, okay. We're tabling that one too, okay. And now, the next thing is the superintendent evaluation, possible closed session in accordance with that section. And we should in fact have closed session. Cecilia would be the one that would have to leave, and we would turn off the owl. Is that right?
So I just need a motion to go into executive session.
Motion to go into closed session, executive session.
I will second.
Okay, aye. All those in favor? Aye.